For the past several days, UN peacekeepers along the Suez Canal have reported sporadic fire from both the Egyptian and Israeli sides. Random interruptions on a battlefield now mostly quiet. But there is another war, the propaganda war in the United States. It has never been more intense. Arabs and Israelis firing their salvos in an effort to capture the hearts and minds and the votes of Americans and their leaders. For a quarter century, the Israelis have had it pretty much their own way in the propaganda war. They would say it is because they have a better case. The Arabs, of course, disagree, and they acknowledge they have been outgunned, outflanked, outspent by the American Jewish community. But now the Arabs believe they have an equalizer, oil, and they have begun to wield that weapon. Tonight, 60 Minutes goes behind the scenes in the escalating propaganda war. Chances are you've never heard of this man, but he is one of the most powerful and persuasive lobbyists in Washington. He is Isaiah Kennan, chairman of the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, chief strategist of the lobby that promotes the interests of Israel on Capitol Hill. They call him the Umbrella Man because most Jewish organizations in America look to him for the nod on where to put their money and on whom to put their pressure. 60 Minutes went to a strategy breakfast at Cy Kennan's home. It was a council of Washington-based Jewish leaders troubled by the lately rising oil-fueled threat of Arab propaganda. High bookbinder of the American Jewish Committee. David Brody of the Anti-Defamation League. Daniel Mann of the Jewish Community Council. Felix Putterman of the Jewish War Veterans.
From all of the full-page ads we see, a lot of other things, that it's clear that the pro-Arab lobby is well-financed now, and they're functioning pretty effectively. It seemed to me that maybe in this area of counteracting distortions, errors, mistakes, that we ought to do a little bit more coordinating of our efforts and see to it that no things go unchallenged when it deserves to be challenged. Well, let's sort of organize an Operation Truth Squad and be sure that any major distortions or errors that people are hearing or reading are challenged with the truth.
These men get the word out quickly to their legions across the country through various Jewish groups and congregations. There are 6 million American Jews, many of them, the most influential among them, actively caught up in the cause of Israel. They give money to political campaigns, lots of it. They are vocal and they are persuasive.
When there is a column which obviously distorts the record and which is prejudicial, then I think that we should make an effort to get the truth to that writer. Now, how this is done most effectively, I'm not sure.
It depends on who the columnist is. If one of us, and I'm sure that we do, have close relationships to a columnist who makes an error, you can call him and talk to him. I've done it.
These men know that a Bill Buckley column, or James Reston, or an editorial in the Washington Post can have a telling effect.
Okay, you pick up the Reston column, you pick up the editorial in the Star, you do something about the speech that Senator McClure made yesterday, and it means either you do something yourself, or you will get to somebody who will do something effective about that particular thing.
Now, the Washington Post editorials on this subject have been so great that we simply put it on a fact sheet. Yeah. Even summarize the points even more briefly and send it out.
They are on a first-name basis with major columnists and commentators. They quickly apprise these writers of what they believe to be distortions or inaccuracies.
Number 2, there's more and more talk now about this nice-sounding phrase to restore the rights of the Palestinians. Now, nobody's against restoring rights of Palestinians or any people, but how do we do a better job to see to it that people understand that those particular words happen to be a code word, that the Palestinians understand, meaning that it will be the end of a Jewish state?
When Cy Kennan goes to Capitol Hill, he can count on a sympathetic ear from 75 to 80 senators, among them Percy of Illinois, Gurney of Florida, Church of Idaho, and Scoop Jackson of Washington State.
Sure, the Jewish community is influential in the United States. There isn't any great surprise about that. They are an unusual people. They are in the professions. They're in the business community. You name it, where excellence is involved, and they're there. And so what? It's the old story that one man in a community who is effective can be a real power in that community, and the Jewish people are effective in every area.
The Arabs' best friend on Capitol Hill, Senate Foreign Relations Chairman William Fulbright, ruefully acknowledges the clout of the Israelis.
Not only can they be extremely helpful to your election, they are very interested politically, they're very generous. On the other hand, if you do not agree with them, they can be extremely effective in defeating you.
Well, they've not done it to you, sir.
There are very strong rumors today that that's exactly what they intend to do in the coming election.
The Arabs lost the October War, not in Sinai, nor in the Golan Heights, but rather in the greatest battleground of Arab-Israeli conflict, which is here in this country.
This is Dr. M.T. Mehdi, who aspires to be the Arab Isaiah Kennan. He's a kind of traveling salesman for the Arab cause, peddling up and down America, trying to generate commitment among Arab Americans to match the American Jewish fervor for the State of Israel. His Action Committee on American-Arab Relations, 50,000 members strong, he claims, wants to get rid of some of Cy Kennan's senators. Today in Florida, he is aiming at one in particular.
Now, what are our goals? I suggest for your consideration that we work to defeat, as your chairman said, Edward Gurney, the senator. He has been anti-Arab and anti-peace. Our slogan should be that he has been anti-Arab and anti-peace.
We should pick somebody else that is more moderate than Gurney, because Gurney just, he had one-track mind, and without the help of the Miami Beach group down there, he's not going to get too much elected. Because, in my opinion, and I believe a lot of people share this with me, that the American policy in the Middle East is not made in the White House, and it's not made on Capitol Hill. It's made in Tel Aviv. That's what we have to change.
I think we should concentrate on demonstrations whenever we have to. The senator comes here, he has an anti-Arab, anti-peace statement, so we go to his rallies, meetings, office, have a demonstration, even a symbolic demonstration of 5 persons.
Dr. Mehdi has been no match for Cy Kennan. There aren't many more than 1 million Arab Americans, and they aren't as wealthy, nor as organized, nor as influential, nor as vocal as the Jews here.
And I assure you that Zionists are powerful because we have not worked. I cannot do anything without your help. And your help means your money. See, talking Turkey, talking to the point, talking kalam dughri, okay?
Who supports you?
Our members, our friends, and we have called upon the various companies, oil companies, which have been benefiting from their contacts with the Arab world to contribute to our efforts.
How much do the oil companies contribute?
At present, I am in no position either to name the companies or the amounts, but there are companies contributing to our efforts, and I hope that the rest of them will also join in.
Why, Dr. Mehdi? Why don't you want to talk about either the names of the oil companies or the amounts?
Because the companies at this stage are coward. They're afraid that they would be smeared, blackmailed by the Zionists.
There is certainly lots of money in the Arab world. Why don't the Arab governments go to people like you and say, here, you can make life a good deal easier for us?
Well, the Arab governments are really not part of the 20th century. They have hundreds of problems of their own over there. And they would not quite appreciate and understand that in an open society such as America, people have to spend money for newspapers, elections, votes, speeches. Hardly any of them have come to power as a result of elections and free campaigns. So they do not quite understand the need for spending money in America to change the public opinion.
The Arab governments are no more enthusiastic about Dr. Mehdi than he about them. Some call him radical, some just inept. But no other Arab has proved any more competent at mounting a substantial campaign in the propaganda war. In Washington, the National Association of Arab Americans, only 2 years old, is trying to get up steam. Most of their fundraising and energy of late have gone into those newspaper ads you saw earlier, the ones the Israelis are trying to counter. The Arab Information Center in New York has had little apparent impact. Supported by the Arab League, they put out pamphlets and press releases, provide speakers, not much more. Chiefly, Arab propaganda here has suffered from a lack of money and direction. The 19 Arab states cover a spectrum ranging from far left to far right. They come together only in their anti-Zionism. The bitter rivalries among their leaders have kept them from mounting a propaganda campaign to match Israel's. Until now, they say.
You've heard of black power, green power, white power. Now it is oil power. May that be praised. Oil power.
Oil power. A sense of the power of oil came to the United States last month in the person of Sheikh Ahmed Zaki al-Yamani, the American-educated petroleum minister of the monarchy of Saudi Arabia. He arrived with a carrot and a stick, holding out the promise of oil in return for U.S. pressure on Israel to give up Arab lands. He stayed for a productive 10 days, and at the end, there was a farewell party at the Saudi embassy residence. Assorted members of the Washington power elite came to pay their respects and/or bid him Godspeed. The majority leader of the U.S. Senate, Mike Mansfield. Again, Senator Fulbright with Mrs. Fulbright.
I heard you on television and you were terribly good.
Sir. Greetings once more. You've had a strenuous day, haven't you?
Oh, one of those days.
There was a distinctly warm greeting from the Saudis' new friend, the Soviet ambassador and Mrs. Dobrynin. If the Arabs don't have many friends in the Congress, they have some friends who do.
I'm with Standard of California, said he had a very nice visit with you the other night at the David Rockefeller's dinner.
Not only Vice of Standard Oil, but Charbon of Sun Oil, Slack of Phillips, and Mobil, and Shell, and Exxon, and Texaco. Clark Clifford, the Washington lawyer, former defense secretary, whose persuasiveness in Washington is legend. His firm represents Algeria in the United States, and he is on the board of Phillips Petroleum. And Big Oil's chief Washington lobbyist, former Texas Congressman Frank Icard. During Sheikh Yamani's mere 10 days in the United States, he managed to meet with the Vice President, the Secretary of State, the Defense Secretary. The two top bankers in the United States, David Rockefeller of Chase Manhattan and Walter Wriston of First National City, dined with him. He appeared before the American public on Meet the Press, and behind the scenes, he backgrounded the editors of the Washington Post and the New York Times. He was a very busy man. Of course, Israeli leaders have been making those same rounds for a quarter century. I asked Sheikh Yamani why he believes that only now are Americans beginning to listen to the Arabs.
You were educated at Harvard. You were educated at NYU. You know the media in this country. Why can you not get access to the media?
The door was closed.
And now?
And now it's open.
Because?
Energy crisis.
Because of oil.
Of course.
If you did not have the oil, people would not listen.
No one will listen to us, definitely.
Is it changing? Do you sense that you have made progress?
You know, the problem, there was a barrier between us and the American public opinion. Now we feel that we are a little bit penetrating that barrier. Once we can reach the American public opinion, there is no problem whatsoever. They will listen to us.
But are Americans listening? Is that message getting across? The Arabs want to convince America to put pressure on Israel to return Arab land now under Israeli occupation. For that, they say, they'll turn the oil back on and finally make peace with the Israelis. Israel says that she wants peace, but she's fearful of giving up too much of the land she now occupies because it will leave her naked to attack again and to possible destruction. Well, 60 Minutes commissioned a poll to determine how Americans feel about those questions and some others. Opinion Research Corporation interviewed 1,231 people of voting age between Christmas and New Year's. In the Middle East conflict, we asked, do you sympathize with the Arabs or with the Israelis? For the Arabs, 7%. For the Israelis, 38%. But 30%, perhaps surprisingly, said neither. The rest had no opinion. Then we asked if Jewish groups in the United States have too much influence over our foreign policy as it relates to Israel. 30% said yes, they do. 48% said no. 22% had no opinion. We wanted to know if Americans believe that the Arab countries are out to destroy Israel, or are they just bent on regaining the land they lost in the 1967 war? A quarter of the respondents believe the Arabs want to destroy Israel, but fully half said that the Arabs want only to regain their lost land. And then finally we asked this. The Arabs have said that they will resume oil shipments if Israel gives back the Arab territories it occupied in 1967. Well, how much pressure, then, should the United States put on Israel to give up those territories? 35% said substantial pressure, but 60% said little pressure or none at all. The poll results would seem to indicate that support for Israel here has diminished very little since the Arabs began to wield their oil weapon. But the Arabs insist they've only begun the fight. Sheikh Yamani, unimpressed by the Arab propaganda effort he saw here, returned to Saudi Arabia, and only 2 weeks later the Saudis launched the first of what will be a series of full-page ads in 16 newspapers across America detailing the Arab position. Tomorrow morning, Clovis Maksoud, Lebanese editor who is highly regarded in the Arab world, arrives in the United States for a 3-month stay representing the Arab League to try, he says, to remove all factors that clog communication between the Arab and American peoples. The Arabs surely have the money. They think they have a weapon, though it could turn out to be a boomerang. In any case, now the Arabs must convince Americans and their leaders, if they can, that they have a case.